Do you want to become a Microsoft expert? Well, how do you even get to the point where you become an expert? Well, that takes a lot of perseverance, a lot of not giving up, and a lot of motivation in order to want to succeed. But consistency here is the key to actually learn as much as you can from this. Who am I? I'm an up-and-coming Microsoft expert, and I will teach you all of the concepts that you need to know in order to pass the AZ-104 exam. But I'm not going to just teach you these things in a theory type of way. We are going to get our hands as dirty as possible and dive directly into the portal.azure.com and play around with all the things and features that Azure has to offer, and we will target it to the AZ-104 exam. So, what do you get when you become a Microsoft expert? Well, forget about using a profile in order to attract clients. Well, there are many like Upwork and Fiverr. If you have a nice LinkedIn profile, people shouldn't just be knocking on your door anymore. They will come running for your house if you are a Microsoft expert. You don't believe me? Well, go to LinkedIn, Google different certifications in different areas. Try to search for the most searched query, which are Microsoft Architects, Azure Experts, Azure Architects, and so on. So knowing programming is one thing, but knowing how to operate the cloud, setting up ARM templates, using Pulumi to orchestrate the whole suite of applications across your entire company, and know how to organize different organizational units or AUDs in Azure is crucial to be an Azure administrator in your work-to-work day environment. But if you are an up-and-coming developer and you want to move from entry level to mid to becoming more senior type, then once you know the realm of Azure, that's when you don't just know how to code, but you can basically do whatever you want to whichever company you want in the most efficient way as possible. All right? You believe that this is the course for you? Well, let's get started. Together, me and you are going on a journey to prepare for the Microsoft AZ-104 exam. But we're not going to only talk about theory, but I'm going to try to cover a lot of topics that are relevant in terms of hands-on. So you will see a lot of screen share with portal.azure.com, which I think is what is needed in order to become proficient in Azure. So now let's try to familiarize ourselves with Azure. Here you can see the Azure dashboard. This is the home page, which I believe you can customize as you want. We can get familiar with the menu here on the top. Let's click on it. We see we have create a resource, home, dashboard. I'm just curious, what's the difference between home and dashboard? Let's see. Okay, so we are taken to the home here. Let's go to dashboard. Okay, so the dashboard is a little bit different. And as you can see, it's a private dashboard, which we can do things with. Right now, there are no resources to display, but we can create a dashboard, which consists of an Azure inventory, Cosmos DB Health, application insights. So just try to get familiar with all these terms. So I believe that a dashboard is a way that you can quickly get an overview of what's going on, either if it's application insights or if it's other critical things that you're wondering about for your environment. We can refresh, as we can also do up here. That would be the same thing. We have a share here, which we probably can share with managers, stakeholders, or other developers on the team or DevOps people. We can also notice that we have export here, which we can use to download things. So now I'm downloading the dashboard and I receive a dashboard.json file. Let's just quickly take a look at what it consists of. So here is the dashboard JSON file. Properties, lenses, order, parts. So you can see that there's a custom format that they're using here, which you probably can import as well into other to have a nice dashboard that other have created for you. But right now I'm simply guessing because we are in the stage of getting familiar with what Azure can do for us. Let's go back to the Azure home, not the dashboard. Let's close this pane and let's take a look at all these services, Azure services. We got create a resource, SQL servers, we got virtual machines, we got alerts, all resources, resource groups, Kubernetes, Entra ID, which is now the new Azure ID, which before it was called Azure ID, and now they have renamed it to Entra ID. This is where we are dealing with things like authorization and authentication, push, and a lot of more services we can get familiar with. There are many, as you can see here. All right, what more are interested to look at? We got resources. Right now, I do have a resource called Developer Nick, which is a resource group that I have created myself. Why do you create a resource? Well, a resource is a way to group different objects. Well, when you group different objects, you can, for example, group network interfaces, virtual machines, and different things like that. Resources are different from subscriptions because a subscription are where you're actually dealing with payment. So that could be different payment for example, different parts of the organization. Let's say you are dealing with Microsoft DevOps people who are only doing DevOps work, then you can create a subscription just for that. Or it could be research and development, it's another group in the company. Then you can also create that. And we can also take a look at inside of a subscription, you can have a bunch of resources. Let's just take a look at how many resources you can actually have in each subscription, just to get familiar with that. Is correct. Resource scripts per subscription is 980. The following limits apply when you use Azure Resource Manager and Azure Resource Scripts. So you can have 980 resource scripts per subscription, which is a lot. Remember that the resource script is a container for all the stuff that you are interested in. So let's take a look at, for example, this resource script. This resource script has not an interesting name. It's just called developer Nick. But this could be a developer type of team, resource and development, or DevOps, as I explained earlier in the video. All right, so let's take a look here now at the developer Nick resource script. As I said, it has not an interesting name. This could be any type of name like R&D or DevOps or accounting. So a subscription can be like accounting, can be DevOps, it can be R&D, for example. We can take a look at the subscriptions here just to familiarize ourselves with that as well. We see that we have one called Sago Labs, which are used for lab environment, which is for this demo purposes that we're doing here. We can also take a look at the developer Nick, which is a resource script, which are inside of these Sago Labs. But think about resource scripts as something that I like to do is to group it by which application you're working on. So let's say that you're working on application A, application B, then you can definitely use a whole resource script for that environment. Usually you could have like a network interface, VPN if you are needing that, load balancer, those type of things. Those things are resources. Mostly all of the things in Azure are resources, and those goes into a resource group. Now let's take a look at how we can create something in a resource group. We will take a look at, for example, how we can create, let's take a app service, because that's quite easy to create. Well, we do see that we have app service, WordPress, there are a lot of things to choose from, but we are interested in the web app. Let's click on it. Let's click create. We just need to have something in our resource groups in order to actually play around with it. So here we will choose the subscription. If we had many subscriptions, it will come up here. And if you don't remember, let's just take a look at how many resource groups we can have per subscription and try to familiarize yourself with this in order to learn about it and pass the exam. So there are 980 resource scripts per subscription. So for example, we can choose the Sago Labs, which is the first subscription we have. If we had more subscriptions, it will come up here. We can choose the resource group. Here we have different resource groups. We have developer Nick, we have default resource group, we have test VM, and so on. We can also create resource groups if we need to. Let's just create a resource group and call it application A, just for purposes. Now you will see a problem. Resource group names can only include alphanumeric underscore parentheses, so we can't have any space here. But if we say application A or like dash or underscore, it is happy. Let's just do application A like this. The web app name can be application A test web app. And this will actually get a link to azurewebsites.net. We can then say if we want to publish it with code or container, Docker container, more on that later, static web app, and so on. We are then able to choose all the runtime like .NET, Java, or Node. Let's go with the .NET Early Access or the .NET 7. Doesn't matter at this point. Let's do Linux because Linux are a bit cheaper. And also there are some limitations on Linux that are on Windows, vice versa. Then let's just do Linux plan. Okay, fine. And we don't want premium because we are just testing. So let's do free, which is shared infrastructure, which you can use in a lab environment like there. And zone redundancy, we can enable it. Here it's disabled because it's some regions that support it and so some regions that doesn't support it. Let's try to, for example, find Europe. can do North Europe. It will affect the some redundancy, as you can see here. So now we can enable it if we need to, but that will also cost money, so let's not do it. Some redundancy is basically allocating different resources across different places. So let's say that the website goes down in one place. If you're typically dealing with this on your own, you would have, for example, a virtual machine somewhere hosted somewhere, and you would have to take care of having that website up and going all the time. But by using some redundancy with the click of a button, Azure allows you to actually redundantly deploy these services, which is the web app for now. And it deploys basically 3 different, for example, virtual machines or Docker containers, not just across different machines, but across different region centers, which means it can do it, for example, in North Europe, let's say in Oslo, Stavanger, or Bergen, if they have resources allocated there and have a center there, which means that you have a guaranteed uptime of 99.999 when you're using Azure, which is pretty cool because then you don't need to do these things on your own, which I think Azure makes great by allowing you to just with the click of a button allow you to have redundancy just like that. And if you ask, is it more difficult? No, it's just a click of a button, enable, disable, boom, it deploys it to different environments, and its redundancy are serving you the nice purpose in order to have your website up and going all the time. Now we can go to the database. Here we can create a database if we don't have. You can see we have SQL Azure recommended, MySQL, Cosmos DB, different type of things. Application, test, web app, server, and so on. This is the name that it's actually using that we already had created. So it's just applying that in order to have like database behind it. Let's go to deployment. Here we can choose if we want to hook it up to GitHub account, which organization, and so on, which is nice because we can use like GitHub flow and so on. We can enable continuous deployment, and we can change the account. Here it's totally fine to have this account, and we can choose an organization. Let's do this one, for example. And if we go down here, we can see repository. We do have a lot of repository. Where are these repositories coming from, you might ask? Well, if we go to github.com, you will see that these are actually coming from here. I'm just not logged in at this moment, but Azure is logged in. So that's why it's able to actually fetch all these different branches and repositories that we have here. So let's just click on test, I guess, if that's a repository we can use. Yeah, it's something I used for Flutterflow, but you can also go ahead and create your own repository for this, just for testing purposes. Let's just log into our GitHub account, just so we see this process. Okay, we are logged in, so we can go ahead and click on create a repository in your repositories right here. That means that we can go up here, click on new, create repository, testing purposes, YouTube, for example. And that's it. Create a repository. It should now be able to find it already in Azure. I think we need to update it. As you can see, it's not here. So let's just update the page and we should be able to see it quite soon. Test, it's not here. Let's go back to our previous. Let's go back to our deployment. Let's try to see again if it's here. Still not here, which means that it takes some time in order to fetch it. We can go out of this web app. Now that we have it, we can create it again just to make it really find it this time. We can say test app for YouTube purposes, for example, like that. Again, we will select the .NET 7, do the Linux, and the region. We do North Europe because I'm in Norway at this time. And we can do the different things that we had for free and the some redundancy and so on. You remember we had that earlier, but right now we don't have it enabled and we don't need to have it either. So let's just do Norway East and it should show up with the some redundancy option as we had earlier, as you can see here. That's totally fine. Let's do the free again and just go to the database. So it says that database is only available for basic or higher app service plans, which is correct. So it means that we do need to have a little bit different plan in order to work with databases. For us, we don't care so much about this because this is just testing purposes, as you remember. But if we go up, for example, to basic, you will see that database is here and we can create it. Let's go back to the previous and just to the free because it doesn't matter at this point. Go to database. Okay, whatever. deployment. Okay, and here we can see the GitHub account. Now it should already fetch it if we go to enable. The problem now is that configuring the deployment with GitHub Actions isn't supported because you have selected this operating system, this app service plan, blah, blah, blah. So in order to actually use it, you actually need to have the paying for it. So let's go back and choose the basic. Okay, go to database, go here, and now we can enable. We're just doing this to actually play around with Azure and see what's going on. This is now creating a resource. There are a lot of steps. I will show you later how you can use a file in order to create this, or use PowerShell. We can see now we got the testing purposes for YouTube here, which is the branch or the repository that we actually created up here. We can then select a branch, which we don't have. So that means that if we go to this branch as we have here, we don't have any branch. Let's see if we can continue without any branch. Maybe it will create main for us. Complete the basics tab in the form about to preview the GitHub Actions. Okay, let's go to networking. Here we can enable public access. Let's take a look at this info. Public access is applied to both main site and advanced tool site. So it kind of like gives you access to everything, and you have to lock it down in order to block things on your own. But if we enable public access, it means that everybody will be able to access this site, this Azure site. Let's just keep it for public for now. We can also enable something called network injection, which we can take a look at what it means. Let's just see here. What is this in Azure portal when creating a resource like a web app? Okay, give it some time. Let's move on to monitoring. Monitoring, okay, application insights. We will talk more about this later, but as you can see, it's still not supported with the selections of subscriptions and so on. Okay, that's fine. Tags, we will talk more about this, but here we can say like this is, for example, development, or this is company, this is environment. Tags is usual because we can, for example, let's just think about Instagram tags. When you tag a picture on Instagram, like location Italy, or food and so on, other users, they can search for food and your picture will come up if it's popular enough. Here it's the same thing. If we do environment, that means that we can, for example, set the value of development. We can also do like other things like company and so on. We can ask ChatGPT, do you have a good example on 5 tags that can be used across business? Okay, so the enable network injection means that you can configure networking aspects like subnets, network interfaces, security groups directly within the resource setup process instead of doing it later. So that's the part where we could enable network injection. But for here, we don't need it. It's a simple setup for now. We do have some examples on tags like prod, dev, test, finance, marketing. So you can see that ChatGPT says department. We have company. We can also say like department. We can be like finance and so on. The thing is that you can actually use tags to not just find things, but you can use it later on to deal with resources, which is nice. You can also use project. So you can have many tags. We can see how many tags can you have per resource. That are different from the individual question that we have had, which was tags per subscription, which are 50. So how many tags can you have per resource? In Azure, each resource can have up to 50 tags. So it seems like it's the same thing as how many tags you can have per subscription. Let's just take a look at that again. Search for 50. So let's see, we have a lot of things here. Tags per resource. Yes, so the number of tags per resource or resource groups are 50. Also the same for resource group. And the tags per subscription are also the same. So that's easy to remember for the exam. But I mean, 50 tags are quite a lot. So tags are more like for identifying different resources, which you can use later on and deal with it in a nicely manner. So those things like what tags we have here are good examples. Environment development, company, that could be just company like Microsoft, for example. And we can have department as the finance and project and so on. We will not create all this. I just want to keep it low for now and use environment development. Let's go to next review and create. You can see that we get error here for form validation because we don't have any branch. So actually we need a branch in order to make this work, which we already talked about a little bit. Let's go to our thing and let's go to our repository again. Let's go to testing purposes for YouTube. Let's go ahead and just create a branch. We can say create a new repository, set up in desktop, get started creating a new file, and so on. We just need a branch. But why can't we do that? Because we need some code in order to actually put something there in order to make a branch. That's the way it works. But if we do like test here, click on commit changes, which we are not able to do. Yes, we are. So let's do test.text in main. You can see that we now get the main probably branch. Yes, so now we have a branch, which means that if we go back here, it will not find it. This is something that I need to fix, which means that we need to do all of these steps again, which I think are very cumbersome, something that I should probably fix. Let's try to see if we can force it again to fetch. Okay, we can. So here you can see we have main branch, the one we're interested in. And now we are able to go to networking and so on as we did. Tags, yes, resources, development, to selected, and so on. This thing here, it says to selected, app service plan, and the web app. It means that the tags will be valid for both app service plan and the web app because there's an app service plan resource along with the web app. Click on create. Now we are creating. We don't have any code here, but I guess and I think that we will get some sort of test code that we will see. This is your Azure web app and so on. So this is the first resource that we have now created in our Azure environment. And you can see there's a button here for download a template for automation. This one is interesting because did you notice how much time it actually took in order to do all this stuff? We haven't clicked on create yet, but all the steps that we had to go through in order to actually create stuff, which is cumbersome. If we do click on the download a template for automation, you will see that we can create it in different ways, just like that. Okay, so that's something, I think it's called an ARM template, if I'm not mistaken here. We can go to ChatGPT and says, is this an ARM template? Yes, it is. Can you give some examples of different deployment methods next to ARM templates, popular ones? So you've probably heard about Terraform, Ansible, Chef, Puppet. Maybe you've heard about Terraform. That's one of the popular ones. I believe there are some others, like one you can operate from .NET. What is it called? There are one called Pulumi. That's the one I'm trying to get it to talk about. And nope, I am talking about Pulumi. Can you give a quick example of a Pulumi CS file? Some examples. These are for C# and these are for the JSON part with Terraform. These are using Pulumi, as you can see, and the other are using Terraform. Do you remember the other we had was the original one? The original one was the one we actually got from Azure, which looks like this, which is an ARM template. In my opinion, I think these are too much information. So I would rather use this or this. So just know that there are different methods in order to deploy resources efficiently as possible using either Terraform, Pulumi, and ARM templates. So now we can go down. We could deploy it with the script if we want to, but we will just click on create and I will show you later how we can deploy with Terraform or Pulumi as a script. You can see we have deployment in progress at top here. So now we are creating our first resource in our resource group called Nick, something like that, developer Nick, which I already told you just to emphasize that this could be a different name. For example, the application that we're working on, application A, application B, or backend application, and so on. It looks like the deployment is still working. So if we go up here, we can see there's a notification. I encourage you to do this thing along as you are watching this video in order to get your hands a little bit more dirtier and get familiar with the concept. That way you will learn something much better than order to just see what I'm doing here on the screen. We do see that the deployment is now succeeded, which means we can go to this resource. We can even pin it to the dashboard. Remember I talked about seeing things on the dashboard. Try to pin it. Here you can see the one we talked about earlier in the beginning of the video where we had a custom dashboard. So we can have a shared or we can have a private. Shared are across other people who log in, and private can be like my dashboard. I can give it a different name, or we can create a new dashboard. For like example, that could be developer go to which means that's code to developer stuff that I like to see, create it and pin. And now the resource should be pinned into our own dashboard. Now we can go to the resource. Here you can see it says test app for YouTube purposes. It's running. It's located in Norway. It's using the free version, so we are not any problems with payment or something like that. You can see the tag here is environment development. I'm wondering what would happen if we have multiple tags, if it would show it up here or if it would be like a list. You can see edit here. You probably see all of the tags here as well. You can see the GitHub project is connected here. So if we click open link in new tab, we will see it here. You see there are not many things here other than the test file that we created. But you see that says now GitHub workflows, which means that it's actually hooked up to our GitHub main test app for YouTube purposes, a YAML file. Okay, this is interesting because you can see that we can have name, build and deploy ASP.NET Core app, which is the one we created because this is a web app. This is a YAML file in order to deal with Azure DevOps stuff. See, it says on, push, branches, main, workflow, dispatch, jobs, build, Ubuntu latest. And this is also something that are different from an ARM template, from a Pulumi template, from a Terraform script template. This is called a YAML file, which are used across different functionalities or environments. But this is something that you can actually use in something called Azure DevOps. So if you go to something called Azure DevOps, which are a little bit different from the portal Azure, let's just go for start free. We should be able to see that we are logged in, get started. Let's do Norway. This is coming up only one time. We need to CJV4 SWS. Oops. Central US, no, we want it to be in North Europe. You see here it says NM709. Let's do just NM009, that's fine. SJW4, SJW4, SWS. You can say like one dev consultancy, just for example here. Challenge validation failed. Let's see if we can make it work. SNGQ, that should work. You continue. Okay, taking you to your Azure DevOps organization with the custom name that we created, which was OneDev Consultancy as testing purposes. And we can create a project here and so on. We can just call this a test project. This is just to see or get familiar how we can use the YAML file and all the Azure DevOps purposes. You might have seen this in university or at your current workplace where you're working right now. So you got repos, which are a little bit different from the GitHub, but they are more integrating this as we speak. Microsoft is doing that. We do have boards, which are like Trello boards and so on, and sprints. One thing we are interested in are called pipelines. Create your first pipeline. Automate your build and release process using our wizard. Go from cloud to hosted within minutes. See here we can do Azure repos, Bitbucket Cloud, or GitHub. Where is our code? Our code is in Azure, or it's actually not in Azure, it's in GitHub, which are probably in Azure. But the one we're interested in is the testing purposes, YouTube. Okay, so how can we use this? We need to select the repository that we are in, testing purposes for YouTube. Or we can select it for all repositories, which you should be a little bit careful if you're working with other projects. So let's not do that for now. It doesn't show up the one we had. I think that's because it's already installed, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, it's here. See, it says suggested, selected. So it's actually already selected it, which threw me up a little bit with the UI design here. Let's approve and install this one, which means that this thing called, extension, are able to now communicate with Azure and so on, and GitHub. Actually, GitHub is what it communicates with. You can see we can configure a pipeline for like starter pipeline or an existing Azure Pipelines YAML file. Let's take a look if we have any existing. Yes, we do have. You see it comes up here, the main test app for YouTube purposes, which is the one that got created when we created our web app, which is the one we looked at. Let's just update this. It's here, GitHub workflows. Notice that it says .github, which means it's hidden. And click on this file. Here we have it. And this is the same file I'm now interacting with using Azure DevOps, which are a different suite across the suite of Azure. But it's Microsoft all the way as well. And here we can see we can actually run this, which means that we can modify this. We can change different things that we would like to do here. We can install different features if we would like to do that, or we can change certifications or certificates and so on. And we can also set up a way to run this whenever we want, like a pipeline. So pipeline is like a way of automating things in order to efficiently develop code as fast as possible across different environments and teams. So this is the YAML file that we also can get familiar with when we are becoming Azure experts. It is faster to just modify this thing here instead of having to click through all of the different things that we need to do in order to set this up. But now you might ask, what are different between this YAML file and the ARM template that we had? That's a good question. And that's something we can take a look at when we go back to Azure. Let's go to the resource. Let's take a look at if we can find this option. We do have name, web app, hosting, and so on. Remember, in the beginning, we did have a way of selecting all the different options in order to set it up. What we do have here is a YAML file in order to set up it across Azure directly. From my understanding, this thing creates the resource. It connects to the resource group, as you can see here, new resource group. When you're dealing with Pulumi, it says new resource group, even though you have it. So you have to be careful about this, but we can go into more details about that later. But when you're using this YAML template, it knows already which resource you are in. It says which branch you're talking about, and it connects to GitHub. And then it says it wants Ubuntu and so on. And then it just goes ahead and builds it across Azure environment. So these things are a little bit different. Get more into details about it. But we can just emphasize on what is the difference between Pulumi, Terraform, ARM templates, and the one that gets produced by Azure, which is a YAML file which ends up when integrating with GitHub. Let's just give it an example so it can understand and explain like this, and we will get a better understanding. So the difference between Pulumi, Terraform, ARM templates, and GitHub Actions are primarily in their approach and syntax, which I might agree to and might not agree to, because there's a little bit different here. So with the Pulumi and the Terraform, we are setting up the resources, and as you can see, the CI/CD approach, where you define in the YAML format, are already inside of the GitHub that we have here. So we haven't talked about any resources. So these are away from creating all the resources, the resource groups, and so on, which are more directly working on the system, the metal that you want to create something on in Azure. All right. Now we do have the resource group developer Nick, and you can see we have now two resources in here. We have ASP developer Nick and test app for YouTube purposes. This app service plan is a service plan that are connected to our app service. We can take a look at it, get familiar with it. So here you can see there are some errors retrieving some data. I'm pretty sure that's because it hasn't gone too far yet. We do see resource group, status, and so on. Let's now try to get familiar with stuff that are like the whole thing. So the plan, I believe a plan can have different web apps as well. Or if it's a one-to-one, let's take a look. It's a web app service plan, one-to-one to a web app. Or can it have multiple web apps in one app service plan? It's not a one-to-one relationship. So a single app service plan can host multiple web apps, as we talked about in the beginning. So you can have various web applications running under the same app service plan. That means that if I go ahead now and I create another web app, it will probably notify or know that I already have an app service plan. And then it would ask me to use that. But let's take a look if that's what's actually happened. Create a resource, web app, and let's just go to web app, the one we had earlier, this one. And let's just see if we get up the option for the resource group is developer Nick. Okay. If we get the option of the plan, do have a new ASP developer Nick here, pricing plan free. Okay. I don't see the option here yet. Test. Go to next deployment. networking. Let's take a look at the template for automation, if it will go ahead and actually show us here. You do see subscription, string, parameters name, and so on, hosting plan name, and so on. It doesn't look like it is creating that in the same app service plan from my understanding. I might be wrong here, but it might be that you can do this, but it doesn't come out of the box like this. You can see group app, web app into app service plan existing. Okay, so let's take a look, create an app service plan. That you can do on your own, but we already have it when we created the web app. Move an app to another app service plan. Here you can see how you can do it. You can move an app to another app service plan as long as the source plan and the target plan are in the same resource group, geographical region, and of the same OS type. This is something that you should note for the exam. Or in just general, because it's quite important to know that, let's say you are in the United States and you are in Norway and they are across different app service plan, then this will not work. So even though ChatGPT says that you can have multiple web apps, it kind of looks like the useful way to go is to have one next to the web app, which means that one app service will be next to another web app, from my understanding at this point. Let's now go back to our portal. Let's try to see if we can access this link, and we probably can. We will have like a test. Your Microsoft web app is ready to go, deploy some code and so on. You can see that for Azure it takes quite a lot of time. This might be because we are on the free plan, so it's using shared across resources. Maybe many people are doing this at the same time right now. This would be much faster if we would actually use not shared resource, but we would pay for it in a different way. So it's still working. Let's use the magic of video editing to see when it's up and running. All right, the magic of video editing has done its thing, and we can see that the web app is live, but we don't have your content. If you already deployed, it could take up 5 minutes for your content to show up, so come back soon. Why, you might ask? Well, because we haven't deployed any web app. We just have created the web app services. It's here, it's ready to go. Let's just quickly see how we can do this, because I think it's important to see this part. We can open, for example, the application Rider. You can also use Microsoft for this. And let's just go ahead and deploy to this link. Can we deploy to this link using IDE? Can you come up with a .NET application test, easy app? And let's go ahead and click on new solution. Okay, it says it's not possible. We don't care about that for now. We will do that on our own. Didn't like this, smaller. Okay, fine. We can create a new solution. Let's see the options we do have here. We have empty solution, or we have ASP.NET Core Web Application. We can use this thing or awesome web app or API or whatever. We can click on create. This we can actually connect to Azure. I want to show you this step using Azure SDK in Rider. And we should be able to see some example or deployed web app, which you need to know in order to deploy web apps. So let's now open Rider again. Add files to Git. Okay, whatever. Cancel that. Let's open it up. We do have our awesome web app here. We do have a model, a view model, and so on. We can start it. This is not in Azure yet, but I just want to show you how fast it is to deploy this to Azure. Okay, so we can see it says welcome here. Let's go to our extension, Dark Reader, turn it off. Now you see we have your awesome web app, or our awesome web app, with login and register and everything hooked up. Wouldn't it be really awesome if we could just deploy this to our web app that we just created, or web app resource that we just created here? Well, we can. How? Well, let's take a look at the Rider again. This is the IDE that I like to do. I like to use when I'm working with development purposes stuff. Let's just make this a little bit bigger for you guys to see. Parents, let's zoom in a bit. Let's go 150 for here. Crazy, okay. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Probably very big. That's fine. We can then zoom in for the code as well. Okay, now it looks very nice and very big to see. But the most important part is that you can see what's going on the screen. Okay, so how do we deploy this app to Azure? Let's take a look at the plugins sections of the IDE. go to plugins, search for Azure. You can see we have something called Azure Toolkit for Rider as well as Azure DevOps. It's this one that are important. Let's install it. We already have it. So let's open it up. You see the Azure symbol here, Azure Explorer. We are not connected to any subscription. So now it's the part where we actually need to connect to a subscription. We are on the wrong tenant. So we need to sign out. Yes, we want to sign out. We want to sign in with a different user. We will need to open an external browser and sign it with a generated device code. That's fine. Let's sign in, copy and open. And since we're logged into Azure in this part, we should be able to now just copy this code that we have. Whoa, it's gone. Okay, so it's GBS blah blah, and we can use it because we already copied it. So let's just paste it in here. Next. Now it's very soon connected, but this is the wrong account. So it means that we need to connect the correct account, this thing, and then blah blah. I think it's this one. Let's take a look. Yes, and okay. Let's do the password. Now I need to authenticate. So just give me one moment. And now you can see it ask me, are you trying to sign in? Yes, continue. Exciting. And now it says you have successfully signed in. And now it says you have successfully signed into the Azure Toolkit. Good to go. Close it. Let's go to our Rider ID. And now we can see it are loading in the subscription. This is the subscription that we are interested in. Click on select. Now it should change it a little bit here. Select subscriptions. Yes, it's this one. You can see it says app service up here. It will now go ahead and fetch all the web apps that we have. And here you can see it says test app for YouTube purposes. How easy do you think it is to deploy? Let's right click here. You can see we can actually restart with the Azure Toolkit, the service right from the IDE if we want to. But is this what we want? No. We want to deploy this thing to Azure. How we do that? It's quite easy. Let's take a look. So let's go to our Explorer. Let's right click on our awesome web app. You see this part here called Publish. That's the one we want. And you now see the option of IIS, local folder, server, and Azure. You guess right? We should choose Azure. Here you see it says use existing web app, or we can actually create a new web app from here, right from the get-go. But we are going to use the existing web app, which are this one. You see it says selected Azure web app runtime is 7, which mismatches with the project that we have, which is .NET Core Framework 6. This is an issue. So let's take a look at the properties of the project. Let's see how easy it is to actually upgrade this to .NET 7. It's not. So what we do, let's go ahead and see if we are able to deploy even though we get this error message. But here the project should be the same as the one that you're actually using. It's a mismatch here. Probably get some errors, but let's just see how it would work. Let's click on apply, click on run. It will now try, but it's a mismatch, so it might be some issues because we are targeting .NET 7. You can see now it's stopping the web app, which means that we would access it here. We wouldn't be able to access it anymore, but it goes pretty fast. You can see it's already up and running, which is the nice thing about Azure. It's now publishing zip file, but it fails for some reason. It tries again. Let's see what's going to happen. This might be because the target runtime is .NET 7 and our target runtime in the project we are working on is .NET 6. How can we fix that? One option is to create a different app service, create a different web app in Azure. Another would be to create a different project which are already targeting .NET 7, but then you need to install .NET 7 on the Mac you're working on Windows or something like that. So now we're going to create the resource directly in here. I removed the two resources that we had. So let's try to create a web app that targets .NET 6 instead. Search for web app. Here, create. And now let's do test app, web app, YouTube. And let's go ahead and do runtime. Now let's try .NET 6 instead. We can still do .NET, we can still choose Linux. We will do Norway, East, and now we will not go through all of the options that we had because we have already looked at those. So let's go ahead and just click on create. All right, so click on create again. Now it's creating. We are now targeting .NET 6 LTS. Hopefully now when we will deploy with Rider, we should get no errors and we should be good to go. Let's take a look. So now we can see that your deployment is complete, which means that we can go to the resource, and if we click on the link, we will probably get the same exact result as we had earlier that is not deployed. So let's go ahead and try to hook it up to our web app here now. Let's go to publish and let's now choose the correct .NET 6 web app that we just created. Let's wait a moment. Azure, let's wait, and use existing web app. Now let's do the test app that we just created, which should target .NET Core 6. You see it's .NET Core 6 here, and I believe that this is not .NET Core, this is .NET 6. Or maybe I'm wrong here. Let's take a look. .NET Core 6 versus .NET 6 web app. I think it is .NET 6. I think they're just referring to something else here. But we can use .NET 6, and which should now be able to deploy, publish, Azure. Let's choose it, apply it. Let's go to run. Got existing web app. Hopefully now it should work. We hope, because now it's using the correct .NET 6 version. Okay. It says it's published. Sounds too good to be true. We are probably going to get an error. When things sounds too good to be true, then there's usually true. Oh, it works. So because now we selected .NET 6 in our web app, we do have our awesome looking web application or awesome web app hooked up to Azure website. So actually, if this is online, you can go ahead and try to search for it, test app web app, and you should get it. And do you see how easy it was when we first had the correct .NET version? It took less than 10 seconds in order to deploy this stuff, which is the power of Azure. So what did we actually do? Well, we used some time on creating a web app to create our first resource in Azure. We used both methods of creating it manually. We did run into some issues with the .NET, which I showed you how to fix using which I showed you how to fix by creating a new Azure web app and by deploying it with Rider. So this is good. Let's now get familiar with other things. We do have our resource group here. We are familiar with the test web app YouTube, and this works now because we're using the correct .NET 6 version instead of .NET 7 as we had. It says .NET Core 6 here. Successful. We do have ASP developer Nick as the plan. This is the app service plan. You can see it's working, does its thing here. It's not sound redundant and so on. What more things can we do? So now that we have gotten familiar with some of the things we can do in Azure, like creating a resource, creating a web app, there are a bunch more things that Azure offers. For example, creating a virtual machine, creating a function app, which we are going to get more into later, and logic app. All these things you can get familiar with when you're taking the AZ-104 exam, which are more familiarizing yourself with Azure concepts. This one is a bit more advanced, so now we're going to get more into how we can administer Azure in a good way as Azure experts or up-and-coming experts. If you are new to things like this, you can think about the next thing we will look at, which is Azure Identity, but you will notice that we have another name. Before you could search for Active Directory. I think it should show up under the keyword Active Directory, but notice it now says Entra ID. This is the new thing. Azure Active Directory are a bit different from Microsoft Active Directory running on a virtual machine in a Windows environment, let's say Server 2016 and so on. We can see that it says Microsoft Entra Connect V1 retirement. All version 1 builds of Microsoft Entra Connect will soon stop working. You must move to Cloud Sync or Microsoft Entra Connect. Let's search for Entra Connect. So Entra ID are now going away. So all builds of Microsoft Entra Connect, formerly AAD Connect, will stop working. You must move to Cloud Sync, Microsoft or Microsoft Entra Connect version 2. Let's see if it shows up. So there are some different here. Manage Microsoft Entra Cloud Sync. Click here to try out the new. Okay, let's do that. Get started with Microsoft Entra Connect. This is a good starting page. Entra Hybrid Identity Solution spans on-premises and cloud-based capabilities. What can you do with this stuff? That's a good example. Oh, that's a good question. So what is Active Directory or Entra Connect? Well, it is a different way to manage users It is a way to manage users and groups within Azure AD, or now Entra Connect. It is a way of creating Azure AD users and groups, managing organizational units, which are called AUS, managing user and group properties, device settings, different things like that. You can also connect it to Twitter or Facebook, authentication, authorization, and so on. And we will take a look at that now. First, we will take a look at the user thing. So let's go to the portal we are on here now. We can then search for Active Directory, which you will see again. It shows up as Entra ID. The thing we are looking for is users. Here you can see we do have some users here, but these users, they are just test users. And we can go ahead and click on create a new user. There's some things that we can do here, like call it something like my user and do the domain. What more things can we do? We can create a user. Let's go ahead and create a new user. There are multiple ways to create users. You can also do that using PowerShell, which are more automating things, which I will show you later. But for now, we will just create a simple user, and we will go here and say user my user 1. Let's give it the display name of my user first one. This is the display name. That means that it's a little bit different than the principal name, which needs to be unique. So we can auto-generate a password. We can click on properties, and here you can see all this stuff we can create. Actually, it's not needed to create all these details. What are needed is actually just the one we had, which were the username and the name or the display name. So most of these things are not needed. For example, only the username, the sign-in address for Azure AD, and the user's name, the given name, and the surname, those are mandatory. Important to know, because that might come up as a question. We can use a Firefox plugin I have called Fake Filler. Ooh, nice. So we have street address, city, and everything is set it up correctly. Let's go to assignments. Make up to 20 group or role assignments. You can only add a user to a maximum of 1 administrative unit. What is an assignment? That's the role that the user will have. A group can consist of many different roles. So you can have like a developer group or the developer group, which have super admin user capabilities. And you can also go ahead and create just different roles. You're probably familiar with this if you have used Active Directory on-premise before. You see there are a bunch of directory roles. For example, we can say that a user can be a user administrator. That means that he can manage all aspects of the users and the groups. We can also say that he can be a Windows 365 administrator, then therefore he can provision and manage all aspects of cloud PCs. That could be like, for example, an IT admin that could have this. And for example, we can also have like a Insights administrator who have administrative access in the Microsoft 365 Insights app. So you see there are a bunch of different roles. Azure DevOps Administrator can manage Azure DevOps organization policy and setting. What I encourage you to do is to get familiar with all of this. You will probably not use all of this in a work-to-work-day environment type of setting, but it's very nice to familiarize yourself with this in order to see it hands-on how it works, create some users, play around with it in order to make it nice for the exam so that you know what you're doing. Okay, so let's just use these roles. We add now Azure DevOps, Insights, User Administrator, and Windows 365. We can have 20 group or role assignments. Remember, a group can consist of a bunch of assignments. And let's go to Review and Create. We got to fail on some validation here. We will take a look at what that can be. Required information is missing or not valid. What can that be? We want it to tell us. We need to check. Maybe the employee ID is wrong, so let's take a look at it. Yeah, it doesn't like the employee ID. So the fake filler didn't do its job. Let's just give it an employee ID of something like this. But let's wait one moment. Actually, we cannot. So that's something to remember because it's too long. But let's say this we can use. So I guess it's better to do this on your own to manually do it. Or I think PowerShell can also take care of this step to have a unique identification. Okay, so now let's go to assignments, and now it should be able to work. We can now click on create. See how fast it goes. Created the user. We got the user here. My first user 1, we can give it a picture. as you want. Let's say that you're setting up a user for some people that are going to work, but I will show you how to do this more in a more automatic way, different. But for now, we can just use a picture. See if we can find a picture. Okay, I found a picture of me. So let's upload it, and here we got the picture. Okay, so now we have a user principal name of this, the object ID. You can see that's a GUID, which we didn't create, but it was created for us. And the account status is that it's enabled. We can convert it to an external user if you want, which means that you can convert internal users to use their external credentials. So let's say you have let's say you have outlook.com. That means they can connect it and so on. We can just try it out for fun. Let's go and use my email address. Here we want to connect you to our platform. Instead of doing that, we can also just use a temporary email like this. And I think that we can also use this in order to see how that would work. Let's load it up. Okay, so we got it. Then we can go back to here and put it in here. Send the invite. And we should be able to get some invites in here. It's sending. Okay, didn't like it because it doesn't match any emails on the user object. Please add this email to the user object and try again. Okay, so there are some things that we need to have here in order to make that work. It says that we need to have this email. You see it says mailinator here. I think if we change this mailinator to this, then we should be able to go back to users. Let's take a look, go to users, and let's try now my first user 1. Let's try now to convert it to an external user. We want to connect you to our platform in Azure AD, and let's send the invite. And let's take a look if we will now receive the email. Successfully invited this user. So let's take a look at the temp email, see if we get anything. Right now we haven't. Your inbox is empty. Let's try to refresh, refresh. It might not like this domain, but I was expecting us to get an inbox. There we got it. So you see how it looks like. It says the software department behalf of this name, which is the name that we have in Azure. It says invited you to access applications within their organization. How you will accept, that's like a token. You click on it, then Azure will connect this. So now you can, I guess, sign in with this user. But of course, we're not going to do this because this is just a temporary email. So let's just get rid of this email address and use another email address for this. Okay, so let's just get rid of that email. Click save, and that will not work. So we need to fill it in. Let's take the fake filler and fill this form only. Okay, we use the mailinator. We save it. We go back, and now we can resend the invitation, but now it shouldn't use this anymore. So whatever, I want just to see that the invitation is kind of like gone. I guess if we don't click on it, okay. And I guess also take some time, maybe some days before this will be gone. But I just want to remove it so that we don't use this email because it's only temporary. But you get the ID. So let's just fill this form again. Fake filler this form. And now it didn't like me. I'm not sure why. I guess because the filler is doing something wrong. So let's just do it ourselves. The email. Let's just do like my email, gmail.com, whatever, and save. Now when we go back to our user, we will notice that this invitation state has pending, and if we click on resend, it will try to send it to the new email, which is nice. Okay, so can we have not an email address here at all? Well, it looks like we cannot. Let's click on save, then you see it's failed to update the user properties. Try again, because it needs to have an email. There's also like an internal email as well. I think that will be created, but now we have used the external. So let's just get rid of this form now. Let's try to create another test user just to see if we can actually see this step again. Create new user, like test user 2, and then our second test user. Password auto-generate, properties, okay, assignments, create. Let's see what will happen. That worked. So you see the only thing we needed was just the two fields. Okay, so here we don't have it as an external user. Let's now take a look at the properties, and we see that there are no emails set up here. So now we have created 2 users, and now we will take a look at how we can create groups. Let's go to Entra ID again, go to groups, and let's take a look at different groups. So there are some different group types that you should be familiar with. One are called security groups, the other are called Microsoft 365 groups. The security group serves as the same function as traditional on-premises groups, which is to secure objects within a directory. And in this case, it has to do with securing objects within Azure AD so that you can perform different type of operations for different users. The Microsoft 365 group, on the other hand, are used to provide a group of people access to a collection of shared resources. And that means it's not just limited to Azure AD, but it can also include like mailbox, calendars, SharePoint, libraries, and other type of things like that. Security groups are used as container units to group users or devices together. So basically you're grouping either users or devices like computers, mobile phones, and so on together. There are 3 main membership types for security groups that you should know about. The one are assigned, the other are a dynamic user, other are a dynamic device, and the assigned, I guess, is the most common. This is where you manually assign users to a group. Dynamic users can change. So, as I said, there are 2 types of groups. Security groups, so dynamic can actually be part of like a script. Security groups had 3 different membership types, which was assigned, device, dynamic user, and the dynamic user. It can change. Now we're going to take a look at how we can create and manage scripts from the Azure AD tenant in the Azure AD portal. We are here now in the group section. We can click on create new group, and in the left hand menu we can check out the group type, the group name, and group description. As you see here, we can choose group type. So I told about security and Microsoft 365. Which one is most common? Well, usually we will use security because Microsoft 365 are used for a collection of shared resources that are not just limited to Azure AD, but like mailbox, SharePoint, libraries, and you can even select it even though you don't have Microsoft 365 set it up. But security is the one that we will use. We're going to create a name here. So let's go ahead and let's say group name is Azure Admins. Azure Admins. We can say group description. That can be like dynamic group. The problem with this is because I don't have dynamic. I can't choose dynamic because dynamic are only able for a different description actually. So I don't have this subscription here, but we will still see how it would look like before. It's important to note that you can create a dynamic group for users or devices, but you cannot create both at the same time. And it's possible to change the membership type of a group after it has been created, but you cannot use attributes in a device-based rule. Those things are some limitations that you need to know about. You see it says no member selected. Here we can add, for example, the guy that we created, which was test admin, or my user first one. We can add him and we can add him to the group. We can say that this is a group for Azure admins, but this will not be dynamic. Let's just see if we can set up dynamic. Cannot choose dynamic group in Azure. So there are some limitations here, so let's take a look at why. Can you make sure your test system is showing that you have the correct P1 license? So you need this correct license. Can you navigate to Azure Directory, licenses, search for dynamic, and it needs to be enabled for the tenant. I believe that's something you need to do from another place, I guess. We will see. So we will search for Entra ID, and then we will search for the license. Try for license. You see it says licenses down here. We have updated the retirement date. Okay, fine. Get started with license. Get a trial. We're making it easier. And then let's choose search for dynamic to confirm. We will search up here in the future section. I don't see that, but let's go here instead. Here we can search dynamic, advanced group access management, dynamic groups. Try Microsoft Entra ID P2. If you would like to purchase a subscription directly from Microsoft, please see the purchase services, Microsoft Entra ID P2. So the Microsoft Entra ID looks like this is the new thing. Let's just take a look at it. So Microsoft Entra ID free is included with Microsoft Cloud, Microsoft Entra ID P1, which costs $6 per month, and Entra ID P2 standalone included with Microsoft 365. So there are some different. You see that it's not different, that it's going to take it over from the other Entra ID. It's just another thing in the suite, which means that there's another option. So Microsoft Entra ID, when you enable this, let's try it out. That's when, okay, let's just enter your work school. Yes, if you need to create. I guess I'm not able to receive email here. We will see. Let's just sign in. I want to activate this to show you how it works with dynamic groups, because this is something that you will be asked on the exam. So it's nice to get your hands dirty on that as well. In order to start a trial subscription, we require a credit payment to be added to your account, not be charged, blah, blah. I was hoping that we had a payment method here, but we don't. So it means that I need to take out do not automatically pay for subscription. Okay, so we actually need a payment here. I'm not sure if I will add it. All right, so now you can see that my user, Nikolai, has Microsoft Entra ID P2, which I believe does that we can now manage groups. And I think we should be able now to do dynamic. Let's see if we can actually do that now. So let's go to our Azure dashboard. I guess we need to log out as well. We'll see. Go to groups and let's take a look at this new group. And now you can see we can actually do dynamic user. So what I had to do was to add my card upgrade to P2, which allowed me to do this step. And I think it's important to show you guys this because that's something that you might be asked in the exam, as I said earlier. All right, so we will create the group type now of security. We will say the group name is Azure Admins. And the group description, and now we will choose dynamic user, dynamic device. We're not able to click on create. I think this can have to do with that we actually need to log out, but I'm not sure. Let's try. Yeah, it looks like it. So let's try to log out. Now let's go to groups again after we have signed out and signed in again. Click on new group. Hopefully now we're able to do it. Let's try security. Name of the group. So as I said, that was admins, Azure Admins, Azure Admins. Let's try to flip this to dynamic user. We do have some issues. Group description, dynamic group, all Azure Admins. And we choose no, we choose dynamic user, we choose dynamic user, and we get an issue because we are not able. Okay, I got it. We didn't need to log out, but we need to add a dynamic query for this to work. So let's do this now. So what is a dynamic user? As I said a little bit earlier, it is a user that can change based on different rule sets, which is powerful. So this can go to different sections of the suite. Let's say that people are administering this in a script, then other users can be updated based on the values, if or else or bools and so on. So for example, as a good example, we can say property. We can choose a property. We can say job title. You can see there are a bunch of titles here. These are the properties on the user, which is very nice. So we can choose like job title. We can say when a job title equals something. This is like a programmatic thing. And we can say if it equals Azure Administrator. You see how this is powerful? Because before you would have to actually, in Active Directory, you would have to go in and take a group, add a bunch of properties or bunch of permissions. That group would have all those permissions. You can put a group on a user and that will work. But what we're doing here is we are dynamically setting the user's properties by updating different sections of the dynamic membership rule sets. So how does it work? For example, you say user job titles equals Azure Administrator. You see it updates it down here once we are doing things. We will again do equals because now you see it's updated to equals. And this rule syntax, you can also edit it like this if you want. So you can get familiar with this as well. You see there an example here, user department in a list of fives, and device type. So you get the point, you get the ID. So now we have kind of like created a rule, and what we can do then is to save this rule up here. And now you see we can actually click on create. It will take around 5 minutes for this to replicate, which means that the user will appear as member of the Azure admin group if the user contain the title Azure administrator. So let's see if it works. Click on create. Remember the user we had from beginning. We will take a look at that user. So our user don't have job title as Azure administrator. So right now, nothing will happen for that group. But the dynamic group should take care of this if we update the user. Let's go to users, and you will see this in action now. Remember this my first user. Let's take a look at some of the properties. For example, job information. Do you remember it says auth non blah blah blah, right? If we update this information to Azure administrator, I'm not sure if we need capital letters or something of if that's necessary, but we'll figure it out together. If we update this, you see successfully updated properties for this user. Remember the group that we created, which are here. That dynamic group are constantly searching along the way for different changes. So remember what it's doing. It is changing or searching for members that contain the title. Let's take a look at it. We see it says dynamic user and so on. What I would like to look at is the query that we created. Let's see if we can find it. Here is it. Dynamic membership rules. Job title equals Azure administrator, right? When this has gathered details, it should go ahead and add a member here. You see? But it can take like 5 minutes or something like that because it needs to populate and do something. So it shows whether or not this group is processing changes to the dynamic group. Right now it's removed some details for you guys. If we can pause, now it's paused. Let's not pause and let's try to trigger it again and it will continue. So I guess that we need to log in, log out, or just wait 5 minutes. And now you see it's done its job. So the dynamic group now has updated the user without us having to do anything. And how did it do it? Well, it searched across the whole Azure Entra ID and it found out that one of the users, the test user that we talked about, has the property for the job title Azure administrator. So you can see now it's one user here. So if you go to members, you see my user first one is here. This is the power of dynamic user. And you can see it has been added without us having to do any job. So that's why it's quite powerful. So do you now see the power of dynamic groups? That you're able to assign members dynamically without having to go through each member and set different permissions or properties security-wise, or without having to go to create a static group where you have to add all the properties yourself. Because when you are using a dynamic group, as you see in this example, which Azure has made it so that you need to pay for, they are quite smart when it comes to pricing. They have to earn money. And I think Azure is one of the most making money machine out there today. But when you enable the P2, I think also the P1, but at least the P2, that's when you get access to the dynamic. And as you saw, we could create members or add the members in the group dynamically without having to lift a finger. You just have to write some code, and we don't actually have to write the code. We just click dynamic and we choose type, job title, whatever property we want to target is equal or and or and so on. And as you could see, it took like around 2 minutes. Once it was populated, it added a member to the group.